fifth period. Well, normally I would say good afternoon to you, but it's still morning. So I'm going to call roll. Maybe think of it as a minimum day when I still get you in the morning, right? So I'm going to call roll just to be a little different. I miss you guys. Miss calling roll, miss saying hello to you. Maybe you'll actually smile when I do this. Well, here we go. So this is going to be our video for chapter 22. There are going to be some other random things on here that you are going to have to pay attention to because I'm going to ask you other questions to make sure you actually watch the video. There's 3 different videos, one for each different period. So don't call someone in second or third or fourth and ask them about the video. Just watch it yourself, you guys. I'm taking the time to make them, so at least you can do is watch them. Thanks. All right. So, good morning, Andreas. Oh, wait, you're not here yet. You'll be here in a little bit with some food. Good morning, Maya. Good morning, Maxine. Good morning, Victor. Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Aaron. Good morning, Aaliyah. Good morning, Jocelyn. Good morning, Harley. Good morning, Adam. Good morning, Lio. Good morning, Ashlyn. Good morning, Mina. Good morning, Daniel. That's me. Oh, yeah, I missed that. That's for sure. Good morning, Autumn. Good morning, Peter. Good morning, Carlos. Good morning, Lole. Lole. Good morning, Olivia. Good morning, Amanda. Good morning, Emily. Good morning, Jocelyn. Good morning, Mauricio. Good morning, Efren. Good morning, Grace. Good morning, Marshall. Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, Paulina. Good morning, Anthony. Oh, you're actually here. Thanks, Anthony. I'm glad you joined us. Good morning, Ashley. Good morning, Haley. Good morning, Sophia. Good morning, Drew. Good morning, Serena. Glad you guys are all here. Oh, Glenn. Andreas is finally here with his food. What'd you bring me? Oh, and nothing as usual. All right, that's okay. Enjoy it. All right, so chapter 22 is going to be about different types of relationships and a little bit about sexual reproduction. So let's get into it. Let's dive right in. Oh, sorry, no pun intended. We're diving. Wish I could go diving. Go diving and see someone like that. See someone like that? Yeah, that'd be kind of cool, huh? Yeah, go see some turtles. All right, so when there is a beneficial relationship between 2 or more different species, it's known as a symbiotic relationship. So symbiotic is going to be a good thing. There are different types of symbiotic relationships. Sometimes it's beneficial, sometimes it's not. So when it's beneficial, it's going to be symbiotic or symbiosis. Sorry, I'm trying to talk today. Actually, I'm listening to those dogs bark. Can you hear those? Yeah, those are my back neighbor's dogs going crazy because someone's probably walking by. So if you have a relationship between same species, kind of like a relationship with me and you, as a teacher and student relationship, it's going to be an intraspecific relationship because it's the same species. We're the same. So are you in any type of relationships? Well, we're all in relationships. We have different types of relationships, whether it's with our parents, with a boyfriend or girlfriend, our brothers and sisters, with your parents or your teachers. You have all kinds of different relationships in life. So when you have a relationship where one benefits the other and the other is not affected, so it only benefits one of them, but one is not affected, then it's going to be commensalism. And so this usually occurs a lot of times with like a shark and a little fish. The little fish just kind of swim around by the shark, and guess what? They're protected by the shark because they're the predator. And then they also get to eat all the little leftover food that after the shark eats, there's always little leftovers, so they get to eat that. But the shark is completely unaffected. The little fish doesn't have any effect on the shark's life at all. So that's going to be one way of doing it. Another one is going to be when the marine critters live in a sponge. Sponge just kind of goes about his days just sitting there, attached to some sort of substrate and just kind of hanging out. And you might have a little crab or you might have a little shrimp just hanging out inside of it. But that doesn't affect the sponge at all, but it protects the shrimp or the other little critter. So that's going to be commensalism. So another one is going to be when both species are going to benefit, and that's going to be mutualism. So that's how most of your relationships should be. Both should benefit one way or the other, when it's a friendship or whatever else, or later on when you get married, it should be mutualism. So you both should be benefiting. So that can be important. Why do you think that could be important? Maybe because it's going to help ensure the species continues on. It's going to be a lot of benefits for protection later on. There's a really cool one way down deep in the ocean by the thermal vents, where an entire ecosystem is dependent on a mutualistic relationship between a giant tube worm and a bacteria. And you're like, what? How does that happen? So the bacteria actually and the giant worm, we know that no sunlight gets there. So what can't be there? Oh, that's right, photosynthesis. So that's how they would normally make food, but there's no sunlight down there. So they have something called a chemosynthesis, which is where it's going to take the chemicals from the thermal vents, because there's lots of good minerals, and the bacteria, and they're going to create food for this whole ecosystem. So that's going to be the giant tube worm and crabs and clams and lobsters and some fish that all live down there. That's pretty cool that happens. So that whole entire food web is dependent on this mutualistic relationship between the bacteria and the giant tube worm. Pretty cool. In a symbiotic relationship where one is harmed and one is benefits, is going to be called a parasitism. So basically you're going to have a parasite, and if you have if you're in a relationship where this occurs, get out of it. Whether it's a friend, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, where one is always taking, then get out of that relationship. It's not going to be healthy for you, and just like it's not going to be healthy for this fish when they have a isopod attached to their head. So the squirrelfish has an isopod that's attached to his head, and it can actually kill him, or it can make him lame, so he can't, or paralyzed, so he can't do anything. So an isopod is also a type of crustacean. What are some of the other types of crustaceans? I'm waiting. Oh, yeah, you're right. Lobsters, crabs, those are all crustaceans. So, and they are really, really diverse. Isopods are really diverse. They can live pretty much everywhere. They live deep in the ocean. They live close to the land. They live in the coral. They live in the reefs. They're kind of everywhere. They can even live, some of them, in fresh water. Pretty cool. The ones that live really, really deep in the ocean can actually get really large. They can actually get up to about 20 inches. That's pretty big for an isopod, especially down deep, that where there isn't a lot of food, because there's no sunlight for photosynthesis. Parasites can actually live either inside their host or outside their host, and they can do damage either way. A lot of times we have parasites in us, or animals have parasites in them, and it doesn't do any damage until they either get stressed out or sick, and then all this damage occurs. Just like with the COVID-19, we might be carriers of it, but we may never realize, we never may have anything that happens to us because we're not sick or we're not stressed out, or whatever the case may be. But we might just give it to someone else, and then they have a really bad reaction because they are stressed out or sick, or they already have a bad system. Okay? There's a lot of fish that actually have parasites and worms in them. That's why when the fishermen actually catch them, and before they come out to either the restaurants or to be sold in the stores, they actually have to check them for worms and parasites, and they're cleaned out. Coevolution is the next section that we're going to talk about. I'm actually going to adjust here. Switch hands, sorry. So that's when they're going to compete to cooperate with each other. And what happens is they develop new traits depending on what's going on. So you have species A and species B, and because of each other, they actually develop new traits to be able to survive, and they have a coevolution. They've actually changed because of this other species. One of the ones that we always know about is our clownfish, Nemo, and the sea anemone. We know the sea anemone is poisonous and can sting us. If we touch it, we get stung, it's going to hurt. And we can have a reaction to it. Where we know the clownfish, they swim in, and that's how they stay safe. That's how they are able to continue to survive. Well, over time, were stung, and now over time, they've evolved where they actually have a mucus on their outer skin, on their scales, to be able to protect them from that stinger. So when they don't feel the sting. They don't have the poison doesn't go into their system. But that happened over a long period of time, over evolution. So that's going to be a part of coevolution. Another type of coevolution is with a predator and prey. So we know when our predator is coming and there's a big school of fish, who's he going to get? Right, the slowest one, the last one, the weakest link, right? Kind of like the gazelles. And they're going to be the ones that get eaten by the lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. So that group of fish now learns that they have to swim faster, so the faster is going to survive, just like we know the strong survive. We hear that saying all the time, the strong survive. So now that school of fish has become faster because the predator is going to get there, and if they want to survive, they have to swim faster, and now the predator has to get faster to be able to catch his prey. So that's going to be a coevolution. It's going to just be a vicious cycle that keeps going around and around and around. Okay, now we're going to move into reproduction. Our marine life is pretty cool when it comes to reproduction. Pretty different for a lot of us. Not something that we would normally see, or at least it doesn't happen on Earth part. It happens underwater. So one of the things that I'm going to show you here is just kind of random, is my dog's kennel. That's where he sleeps. Yeah, he likes it. Luna likes it. One of the things I'm going to show you, I'll get to in a little bit. So going back to reproduction. So if your species needs a partner to reproduce, it's going to be called sexual reproduction. And if you don't need a partner, it's going to be asexual reproduction. So you reproduce by yourself. So most of our plants on Earth and in the ocean actually reproduce this way. So do you guys want to see Luna? Luna, that's a baby, that's him. That's Luna. Hey, Luna, look, say hi. Hey, being a little butt. So with asexual reproduction, a lot of times it's like with with plants, they bud, and their species is going to be exactly the same as their parents. This can be benefits, and this can be a problem, because benefit is that it's going to reproduce quickly, so they have a lot of them. But the problem is that if anything occurs, they can't breed out the diversity. They're not diverse enough, so they can't breed out anything negative to help them continue their species. That can be a problem, because if there's something that some sort of bacteria or something else, that fungi that comes around, they can't breed it out very quickly, so that can become a problem. So we just said if you need two parents, or a sex and an egg, an egg and a sperm, then it's going to be called sexual reproduction. It allows for faster evolution. So they're able to, if there's a problem, they're able to breed it out much more quickly than if you were an asexual. Some species, kind of like jellyfish, which I don't have any around my house at the moment. Jellyfish actually spend part of their life in asexual and part of their life in sexual reproduction. Kind of depending on their life cycle, depends on what kind of reproduction they're in. There are many species that are actually able to reproduce sexually and asexually, which is kind of cool. Like a sponge. We just talked about how they can have a bud, but they can also release eggs. So one of the sessile sponges, they release eggs and sperm into the water, and hopefully the current catches them and is able to connect the two, and then they reproduce. A little more challenging, and it's always not guaranteed. So in my bedroom, I actually have kind of a sea. I have like a sea theme, ocean theme. So here are two of my pillows and their cases. So we have coral, and we have some sponges and different coral, and we have a clam and a snail. And then my other pillow just has a clam. So we're going to talk about those a little bit and how they reproduce. So the star coral actually does the same thing, where it releases a bunch of eggs and sperm, and it hopes with the help of the current that they're actually fused together, and then they start reproducing that way. And this is going to be called mass spawning. So during mass spawning, the invertebrates, like our crabs and our shrimp, take advantage of it, because now they have food. They can feast on it. And then once they become like little larvae and they're kind of floating around, then the fish get to them. So that's why that's not always a safe way to occur to be able to reproduce. Think about some other animals that maybe mass reproduction happens with. I'm going to show you one if you didn't think of the answer yet. That is the turtle. Yeah, turtles mass reproduce. We know that they lay about 300 eggs. The sea turtles lay about 300 eggs during their spawning months. And that way, so some of the other ones are going to be fish, squid, clams. I showed you the clam. You want to see the clam again? The clam on my pillow. Yeah, they actually they do mass reproduction also. Because the parents don't take a lot of time with them. If they do take a lot of time with them, then they don't reproduce as many. So moving on to like the flatworm. Flatworm is kind of cool. He's a hermaphrodite. So depending on when they fight, when they become in that time where they're reproducing, so they will fight to become the male, because then the female actually has to carry the eggs. So I guess they all want to be the female. I'm going to take you outside. It's really, really bright though. Not sure if you're going to be able to see me. I'll stay in the shade. So they will actually fight, and the loser actually has to carry the eggs. And then some species are going to actually change their sex according to however many of the other sex there are. So if there's a lot of males, some of them will change to females. If there are a lot of females, some will change to males to make sure that their species is continued on. Some fish, especially around the reefs, actually change sex depending on the temperature of the water. We know that also turtles, and they change their sex is determined somewhat by the temperature of the when they're laid. Mollusks are pretty cool because they actually change depending on which one's on top. So a mollusk is kind of like a clam, where they attach to a substrate, and then when they are there, the next one they're going to start off as a male, and then the next one goes on top, and the one that goes on top now becomes the male, and the one below is now the female. And then they kind of stack up, so they kind of change depending on what's going on. And then if a parent actually does spend a lot of time with their offspring, they'll have fewer babies. So they make sure that they're taken care of, they have a lot of time with them, and they have a higher chance for survival. One of these is the Adelic penguin. They spend a lot of time. So they only find one mate for life. And then, so once they have their egg, one will stay on their egg to incubate it. And, they have some pretty harsh conditions. They have all those in the Arctic that's freezing, for one, and they have high winds. So they really take care of that egg. And while one goes out to get food, the other one is incubating, and then they might rotate, whatever. And then they actually stay with their baby once it's hatched until it can actually survive on its own. A lot of our seabirds kind of do the same thing, and some of our birds actually put on these big old shows to attract the female. The males are always the ones trying to make show off and do these things to attract the female so they can actually mate. Seahorses. Seahorses are really kind of interesting. The thing with seahorses is the fact that the female will have the eggs, and then when she's going to lay them, she puts them in the pouch of the male. And then the male incubates them. He doesn't give them any nutrients. He just incubates them. And then when they start to hatch, the female, if she's around, she will actually eat them. I used to raise seahorses, so I know about that. We actually had to take the female out of the tank and then put her in another tank while the little baby seahorses were developing, because she would actually eat them if she was still around. Okay, moving on to one of our last parts is sharks. Sharks are pretty cool. They, depending on the type of species of shark, depends on whether they have live births or they lay eggs outside or they lay eggs inside. And sometimes when they lay eggs inside, they hatch inside, and then one shark will go and eat the other shark or eat the other eggs that aren't hatched yet. Pretty unusual. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted by my dog. Luna just was like running around in the backyard for something. So most of them are going to lay eggs, and some will lay eggs outside externally in a pouch. And it's a really tough leathery pouch, and they'll go and deposit that pouch. It's actually called a mermaid pouch. So they'll go and deposit that pouch maybe in a cave or in another area. If the babies live, the babies live. If they don't, they don't. And whatever happens, happens. Some of them actually give live births. They usually only have like 2 of them. And then some species like the sand shark tiger, they start developing their predatory skills while they're inside, as I kind of mentioned. Sorry, there's a plane going over. And so they actually develop that predatory. So when they're hatched inside, they'll actually start to attack the other babies that are in there. Okay? And then the other ones that are the mako and the thresher shark, they eat the other eggs that are not hatched yet. Then going on to the pinnipeds, the cetaceans, sirenians, and polar bears. They provide the most parental care. Blue whale, which we know is a cetacean, their gestation period is about a year. That's longer than ours. and then they nurse their babies for about 6 months. And that calf can actually gain about 250 pounds per day for 6 months. That's a lot. And then they, about 7 to 10 years is when they become sexually mature. Well, that's it for chapter 22. I hope you guys have enjoyed this a little bit different way. Kind of got to see a little bit more of my house, not just me sitting down. Got to see Luna. There'll be some random questions for you. Make sure you're clicking on the right one. Miss you guys. Hope everyone stays safe and healthy. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.